So, welcome, Doug and Jane of Port City Paranormal. Do you both believe in ghosts?
You want to start?
No, I definitely believe in ghosts.
I always have believed in ghosts.
I didn't always believe in ghosts. I wasn't sure until I actually saw one.
Oh, excellent.
I changed my mind.
And how old were you?
9.
Wow. So, what is your understanding of a ghost, and are there different types of ghosts?
Okay, you're going to watch us have a fight now.
Now, I mean,
Let's start with Jane then.
there are different types of hauntings. There is the active haunting.
Okay.
And then you have the residual.
Mm-hmm.
Residual haunting, I don't know whether you know about this or not, but it's like a video that's played over and over again.
Oh, yes. Dave Schrader, I heard him speak at a conference out here, Paracon, a couple of years ago, and he was explaining it was like it was on repeat. So basically, yeah. So,
and you cannot interact with any of the spirit. They won't pay any attention to you. Go ahead.
Body language.
We fight all the time. Because I've studied different places than Doug has. And like for my studies, I get the active and residual, but that's a deep subject. But what I was thinking about understanding a ghost and the different types is their personalities. Mm-hmm. That's what's different about each ghost. And people just seem to ignore that ghosts are people too. Mm-hmm. There are other things out there, as you say, others. Mm-hmm. But just we encounter is mostly spirits, consciousness.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, now there are other spirits that are non-human, and I truly believe that. But I would call them ghosts.
Mm. So, as we were saying earlier, I refer to everything that's other as entities now, because energy entities, really, because that's what it really is, a bunch of energy because we can obviously pick it up on your EVP devices if we're ghost hunters or paranormal investigators. In ufology, we have the magnetometer, and whenever something happens in UFO land, that gets set off. So there must be some type of energy that can be registered in all of these different encounters. And I think I've seen enough similarity between what happens in a paranormal investigation now to a ufology skywatch to say that it's the same energy that's being sourced. It's just a different projection. So, and I suppose poltergeist also, different type of ghost, but from your perspective, Jane, that means it's just an angry personality ghost. That's,
Well, poltergeist, I just don't know how to say this, but usually poltergeists are from, oh God, I can't even think, my brain's damaged.
Poltergeist for us, as far as we're concerned, is a living agent. Mm-hmm. A human being that is projecting his energy or her energy outward from them. Mm-hmm. They can be very destructive.
Mm-hmm. But a human being is not a dead human. I mean, God, that came out funny. A poltergeist is not.
It's a living agent.
Yeah, it's not from someone who's passed on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing, is more they're saying that this is energy from somebody like me. We've been, I'm trying to think about that. I'm sorry, Sharon, my brain is just going nuts.
No, that's okay. It's difficult sometimes to define these different type of entities, but I think you're onto something there. I mean, it's a pent-up angry entity, but you're right, it doesn't have to come from a dead human. It can come from something other, or a different source, parallel dimension even. That it could come from somewhere that it can also have been something that's started maybe with a human but has been expelled.
Poltergeist cases are what Lloyd Auerbach calls a mixed bag. which it starts with a human being projecting. It's like they have anger and they can't get rid of it, but they channel it to like throwing a dish across the room or something like that, or rocks on top of a house.
Or they start a fire.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
but
a big
they
one.
also, because of that intense energy, can draw spirits to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that compounds the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
When I interviewed Paul Cropper, he'd written Australian Poltergeist a couple of years ago. He had actually done research in Indonesia, and he found that traumatized children actually were the primary source of poltergeist activity, and that basically the traumatized child, the abused child, to protect themselves, learned how to actually create a fire or start a fire, but it was blamed on some poltergeist entity. But there was obviously like devices would activate when a poltergeist comes into play. So obviously there is something there as well. But you're probably right. It probably starts with the child, and they attract in this entity who's seeing this energy. Yeah. So that would make a lot of sense. Yeah. But do you also find that it's primarily from children, that poltergeist
That's
stuff?
what the studies say. But it could be up to somebody in their 30s.
Oh,
it depends. It's an unhealthy way to get rid of anger.
Yeah.
Inside.
It's usually by a child that's going through puberty.
Yes.
With right. The raging hormones.
But not always. Yeah.
But not always. But mostly it's in preteen and early teens that you see it. But it's the funny thing is that psychologists will tell you that is the area when a lot of mental illness starts to kick in is puberty. So maybe there's some correlation between that raging energy.
Well, there's correlation between schizophrenia and people that hear voices.
Right.
Receive messages from angels or however they speak with us.
I interviewed a few years ago an American Indian shaman, like a medicine man, although that's probably not the correct terminology. I'm not up on the latest terminology.
Shaman's great, yeah.
Good. And basically, what they were saying is, if when they've been in the situation where they can visit asylums in the US in this situation, he basically walked through and he said that mostly 75% of the people in your asylums were actually psychic medicine people who were supposed to help their tribe, but they were misinterpreted or misdiagnosed. If they had been raised in a tribal environment where it's encouraged for them to speak to spirits, they wouldn't have gone, as far to the other side. And so basically what came out of that was a lot of the people that we feel are mentally, or let's say our societies deem mentally impaired, aren't actually mentally impaired. They're actually sensitive. They're in touch with the other side, or people that have passed on.
That does happen. But there's a lot of other people that have been hospitalized in an asylum that don't need to be there, but it's a small percentage. Most of the people in the asylums deserve to be there.
Well, you put anybody in that environment for a long enough period of time,
you go crazy.
You will go crazy.
Yeah. And this is what the shaman was saying. He says, you shouldn't let them out because they've now been there too long, that they are actually but if they were given, if society identified them during their pubescence when this is starting to show, and they were nurtured in their role, they would go on to become the medicine man role in their culture or their community, which is where they should be. These people should be living elevated lives, but instead we're not recognizing their roles, their correct roles in society. And that's what he was saying. And basically, they're shunted off to asylums, not looked after, and they then become negative in what we deem our society. So I thought that was quite eye-opening when I did the interview with him, because I was thinking, and then there was a documentary that came out confirming that about a year later. So, but nothing's been done, I don't think. I mean, although in the US, didn't you dump out most of your asylums in the 60s?
About 90%.
Yeah,
closed by 1995.
Yeah.
Can I just say, did they all go to California to live?
Yeah. Yeah, no, they all just put them out on the streets.
Yeah.
And they bust them from downtown, because if you have a crazy person, they'll take them to the emergency room and they'll give them a little help, but then they kind of give them a bus ticket to anywhere else but our city. Oh, you know, it just kind of, what do you do with the homeless? And most of our people that are homeless would probably benefit from being in an asylum. Like, we're looking at the word asylum in two different ways, because asylum used to be a good thing. And now it's considered, you just think of the people chained to the walls and stuff. Yeah, that did happen. But right now we're taking our people in need of medication and some kind of guidance, and we just put them on the street.
Yeah.
And they fend for themselves, and that's just not right. But we didn't want to talk about that, did we?
No. No, but it's an interesting segue into, I think these days society is it's kind of bleeding into all areas, and the fact that it's now bleeding into even the paranormal area and the alternate medicines and things like that should be a bit of a wake-up call, to be honest. So I mean, and it's good though that people like myself and you, we all know this now. This is knowledge that we previously wouldn't have been told or found out about. So I actually think it's a good sign in a way that we can have discussions on things like this. So when a ghost is not being sensed, that's seen, heard, or felt by the living, do they still exist in our physical world? And if they don't, where do they go in between, or do they just not exist? I mean, this is a personal question, because I've often thought, you see them on, they come out and do their haunting, if it's a repeat haunting or if it's just a poltergeist visit. Where do they go? Are you a fan of this above and below theory? Whereas there's like there's a middle earth, and there's a lower underworld, and there's the overworld as well. What's your theory? Have you got a theory on what happens when they're not actually haunting us? Because it's not a 24/7 thing. It's intermittent, what we see.
Well, with ghosts, the first thing, if you're not sensing a ghost, where they go is a big question that we'll probably never be able to answer. Because I think most spirits come and go as they please. And I think, of course, you have the trapped spirits. I keep referring to the asylum that we went to. The name was Willard. It was a good thing to shelter these people, and now it's just turned into something ugly.
But one thing we did notice in Ferry Plantation House, it's a historic plantation house in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Right near Edgar Casey's place, home.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to see that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We actually recorded the voices of spirits talking to each other about us.
Really?
Yeah.
What did they say?
We didn't know they were there. We didn't feel their presence, but they were talking about us. They directly said, don't let them know that you're next to them.
Really? That is.
Yeah. What would you call that? An interactive spirits? I wouldn't.
No, they're actually they
have standards.
They're observing us.
Yeah.
They're classes. That's what it is. They're classes.
At this one place, Ferry Plantation, when it first opened, we got a ton of EVP and experiences and things, but then it started to be everybody went to Fairy Plantation every day, every week. They probably get tired of being a tourist attraction. And if they had revealed themselves to us, even more people would come to bother them.
But think about it this way, is that spirits need energy to materialize, correct?
Or to connect with us.
But all these people coming in and sapping their energy may prevent them from actually materializing at all, either audibly or as a form.
That's parapsychology. They say if you want to see something, you're not going to. And are we vampires on their energy?
That's what I think.
Yeah, because we know we have living vampires that suck our energy.
Yeah,
sure.
That's very true. Well, I've never really thought of it that way, but yeah, maybe that's.
I think we do them harm sometimes if we don't go in with good energy.
Or they just get sick and tired of us and go away.
No. How can we have such good luck?
I don't know, because we're nice to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
We go in with a positive energy, and there are too many people that want to go in that have negative. We've had people come. We went with another group, and one of the guys was drunk off his butt. That's not what we're here for.
No, that's a no with us with sky watching too. No drugs, no alcohol, and positive thoughts and meditation. And that's why I think every time we go out, we get hits, because everything is positive that we do. And
absolutely,
yeah. So, and even when I went to St. Helena and I was sitting and I was having that experience underneath the window, I wasn't. That was the first one I'd done in a long time, so I was actually quite excited, like getting off the boat and doing that. So maybe that's why I had that thing happen.
Exactly.
We've run through we have a little form that everybody fills out, and one of the things we measure is we ask each participant, what was your energy level when you started, and what was your energy level when you finished? And the statistics are still not compiled, but pretty much if you have good energy people coming in, you get more hits.
Yeah.
Or more experiences in our case.
No, that makes more sense. Okay, let me have a quick look here. How old were you both when, I think Doug's already answered this, 9, I believe. How old were you both when you had your first experience of the paranormal? And was this experience the trigger that led you onto your current path with Port City Paranormal?
I've always had experiences with knowing, and I hear voices sometimes, and they're usually voices that are telling me, stop and wait a minute, don't go on with this, together.
I don't think that the early events really sent me on this path. I really don't.
We've always been interested.
I've always been interested, but the idea of doing what we do could have only been executed on meeting Jane.
That's it, because when we met, our first conversation was, we were on one of those Match.com things.
Oh, yeah. So
and we sat and talked about ghosts and spirits and Halloween. The only thing I was afraid to tell him I rode a motorcycle, because I thought, well, maybe that, but it worked out okay.
Yeah. She taught me to ride a motorcycle.
Oh, wow.
We're adventurous. But I think was it 2003 or 4? We were watching Ghost Hunters together because we believed that it was a real show back then.
Most people did at the beginning.
Yeah. And Doug and I look at each other and says, we can do that. And so then we started studying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were studying for about a year before we even stepped out of the house. Yeah.
And then
the first good one. Tell her about the first voice.
It was, of course, at the Willard Asylum in upstate New York.
Oh yeah, I remember the creepy photos from that place we put in the
I'll send you some more.
That was very creepy.
We really didn't get to investigate inside a building the first time. The superintendent of corrections allowed us to walk around the outside of one of the old buildings that was crumbling.
Mm-hmm.
And we had our recorders and stuff.
Our K2s and
yeah. And first question I said, is there anyone here? Is there anyone here? Does anybody want to speak to me? And I was sitting in a chair listening to this, and
later that evening,
Jane was over on a couch 10 feet away, and she heard the yes. And she sat straight up and said, "Oh my God, I heard that."
That was it. That just, because I always knew that there's something beyond this life that we have. But hearing a voice from the past or whatever it was. Oh man,
this was one of these places where that we walked around the building for 55 minutes recording. Mm-hmm. And when I got home, I listened to it and I heard 8 EVP. And we were so excited. Mm-hmm. But then the next year we got better equipment, better headphones, better this, better that.
Yeah.
There weren't 8 EVP on that 55 minutes. There were 28.
Oh my gosh.
Now this place had been completely closed down. It wasn't overrun like a lot of paranormal sites are. These people, there was a lot of energy built up that they had to spend on us, communicating with us. And they wanted to.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean.
And one of the best EVP was the next year when we went back to investigate 2 of the buildings inside. We were doing a walk around on that same building that we had done the first time. And I asked the question, "Do you remember me?" And we got this real long response that said, "I remembered you when you first walked past us."
Ooh, creepy.
I mean, the spirits are active. Their consciousness is still there.
Yeah, obviously.
But she said us.
Yeah.
So how many were there?
Oh,
in that one spot?
Full.
That it was kind of.
Yeah, this was outside the men's violent cottage dorm. Okay. And you have to realize that the first and second floors were patients, but the third floor is where the nurses and the doctors stayed all the time. Mm-hmm. There's part of that facility has been turned into a felon camp for drug people. Mm-hmm. And it's got the concertina wire around. Some of the prisoners have reported they've seen doctors sitting on their cots. Mm-hmm. What else is there?
The Lady in Red.
Oh, the Lady in Red, of course. But they've just seen a whole lot of stuff, and they'll sleep in the hall some nights.
Yeah, because they can't hack it.
No, well, they're in there for drug abuse. They're not real renters anyway.
Have you ever heard of Paranormal State, the TV show?
Oh,
Ryan Buell.
What? Who's the lead?
Ryan Buell.
Oh, no, I think I've heard of the show, but not. I don't think I've actually watched it.
It wasn't on that long, but those people.
My favorite one was the Dead Files. I like The Sensitive.
She is about as sensitive as my shoe.
Is she?
You know, she was a paranormal investigator at one time, and she brought in a psychic.
Oh, really?
So she's not psychic.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. As you say, you never know what is fake and what isn't. But I must admit, I got hooked on that show. This was years ago, though. It was when it was first airing. So is it still on air? Is it still on?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe it's in syndication.
Yeah. No. It's still on. It's big now.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Because I remember, I thought that was prior to me realizing that a lot of the reality stuff was scripted.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, if you already know that, it's like the wrestling, isn't it? You know how the wrestling's not real?
Yes, it is.
That's how I kind of put all this reality stuff with the wrestling now. And
Yep.
as long as it's a known entity that, you know, that, then I can still enjoy watching the shows.
Entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What I find amazing is how offended people get when they, you know, they go, oh no, they shouldn't be doing that. And I'm just thinking, well, if it's got entertainment, if people are aware that it is purely entertainment, then it's not
People
a
are
thing.
not aware. They
Sorry?
want to believe they want to believe that this is real so badly that they believe it's real. And they look at you and you say, this is entertainment, this is not real, and they think, what's the matter with you? You don't like her? And it's like,
You're
no,
jealous.
I don't. Yeah. Oh, it's so silly.
We're jealous.
Yeah, it is. So if you could you share with us a past investigation that stood out from the rest due to the phenomena you experienced? Who shared the experience with you? Was it a tactile experience? What I mean by that is, did your hair stand up on end and stuff like that? Could you actually have a physical, emotional response? And which of your senses was triggered? Like, did you smell something? Because I've been on stuff where I've smelt things and I've gone, oh, I actually have really good smell. I don't know, like I'll smell things before other people, but I've got shocking hearing, so I'm not very good on the audio, but I'm great on smells. I will smell, and I will also pick up on changes in temperature very quickly. So is there anything that stands out to you, a past investigation, that maybe that one in the cellar, you know, the creepy one, there was a bar or something you investigated and you went down into the cellar? Remember that one?
Which one was that? How many bars have we done?
Oh my gosh. That was probably
That scared me when I read that.
Charlie Brown's.
That's the one. Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
like that. I didn't like that. I basically edited that very quickly.
Yeah, we're going back to Charlie Brown's at Halloween. It's a real fancy business now.
Oh,
so
really?
we're going to entertain the business
with our stories.
Yeah.
I will never go there. I will never go there. If I ever come and visit, I will never want you to take me to there, because that scared me. When whatever you sent through, out of everything you sent me, that was the one that I kind of went, okay, never going there. I just felt like do you know how you said before a lot of people see demons and stuff? I actually felt there was something evil in that basement area. And I thought, no, I'm not going anywhere near that place. You know, I was glad that you didn't go back there. Now you're going back.
We
were there about 3 or 4 times.
You know that they, when the boy lost the lease on the place and opened another bar, and of course that was haunted too. But when they were refurbishing this bar to be a business, they were digging up the bottom and they found bodies under the building.
That must have been what I was picking up on, because because it was down in the basement is when when it hit me, and I kind of thought, there was a photo in the basement area, and I just thought, oh, I don't like this at all.
Huh. Well, I think the best place we've ever been beside the battleship, because we've done so many things there, is that asylum up in New York, Willard.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I'll go there.
You won't go either?
I'll go there. It's just that, as I said, out of everything you've investigated, it was that basement that scared me. I kind of went, okay, don't like that. But then I also get very claustrophobic. I wasn't too keen on battleships, going into the battleship either. So maybe it was the claustrophobia element, but that was the one that when I saw a photo, I kind of didn't look at it too long.
Well, everybody on the battleship are nice guys. You know, they're just sailors.
Sure they are.
Yeah. But in Willard, there was an entity there, and it must have been the head nurse or something. We have actual audio of somebody jangling keys and then opening a locked door. And then you hear it being locked back as she went through the door. She must be doing night rounds or something. But
found her. Yeah.
Explain what happened to you.
Yeah, I was measuring around a doorway that went out to a loading dock, and my K2 meter just pegged. And that was the last thing I remember. But another lady that was with us, Carol, was shaking me and saying, "Are you all right? Are you okay?" And I just had this sense of a female presence that passed through me.
Oh,
and
really?
I ended up 10 feet back from where I started, sick to my stomach, horrible headache. And it was awful. It was a terrible experience.
So she walked through, you think the entity actually walked through your body, and that's what?
Yes.
Or walked over them. Yeah.
But she tried to hurt Jane.
Yeah, I was outside the doorway, not in that same room that Doug was. I was outside the doorway shooting some video or something, and I had a cast on my hand, so it was kind of hard for me to open the door and then hold on to my gear at the same time. But somebody was trying to push that door closed, and I think one of who came and opened.
I did.
Yeah, because it was trying to smash my fingers in the door. I couldn't get out. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to take two hands to pull the door off of her.
Yeah. Oh, in the same place, Doug and I were down in the basement there, and or I don't know where it was in there, but I'm looking at Doug, and he's doing the shuffle around on the floor and stuff. I'm looking at him like, what are you doing? And the door was pushing him from behind and trying to knock you off your feet.
Yeah, I was sliding across the floor, and I couldn't get my feet under me because the door kept pushing me. I finally turned around and yelled, "Stop it!"
It usually doesn't.
And they stopped.
Wow.
So
yeah.
But it was a great place. There was so much going on. There was a room where we set up, and we left a recorder in there.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were not there, you could hear somebody opening our cases.
You know, the snacks.
Oh, yes. And checking it out. Checking the gear out.
Junk.
Yeah.
There was nobody in the building.
Just us, and we were in a different wing.
Yeah. And we went with another group that was from Geneva that they kept saying something like, "Oh, that's Jane and Doug stomping around upstairs." We were in another building, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they were well known.
It's also the same place where the other team had this psychic, and anyway, she was trying to say, oh, the spirits are crying and all this stuff, and they'd actually say something nasty to her. And we've got this on recording. I don't think I can say this on YouTube, but they told her to go herself. And then she says, "Well, you're hiding. Why are you hiding?" What do you say?
BS.
There were so many different personalities around there. Some of them were very heavy, but we asked this, just generally, "Do you know where you are?" And we hear this little voice going, "Paris?" Well, we were in the insane asylum, Yeah. We want to go back there so bad.
We recorded so many voices. One of the rooms, I asked, "How many of you were in here?" And the recording I got was the live ones.
Oh, so you have somebody with a sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, there was something there without a sense of humor, because Doug and Todd were upstairs, and they walked into one of the patient rooms.
Oh my gosh.
And there was something like a black fuzzy cloud up in the corner or on the floor.
It started out on the floor, and it just kind of rolled up the hall.
I've seen that. I've had something similar.
It went to the ceiling, and one of the psychic girl was already in the room. I followed her in. I was about to grab her arm and pull her back out. Yeah. And Todd who was standing at the door says, I'm freezing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going in there.
Mm.
And about that time, I went to say something and it choked me.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I've had something similar happen with, I call them shadow people.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're actually a big thing in ufology. It's usually you start seeing them out of the corner of your eye. What's that called?
Peripheral vision.
Peripheral. That's it. Isn't it amazing? These are normal words I use all the time, but the moment I get on camera, and it's like
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. In ufology, a lot of people, when they start seeing things, the first time they see them is in their peripheral vision, and then what happens is they start appearing in the bedroom in the corners, and then they start as a shadow, and then the shadow looms and becomes actually into like a limbed kind of entity, but it's still a shadow. Yeah, so in ufology, yeah, shadow people are really well known, and they're what a lot of people think the men in black are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get a lot of people seeing shadow folks, but these entities, they're just like little puffballs about the size of a cat or so. We've got a picture of one at Willard, but we were downtown Wilmington doing a house they were having problems with, and there was one on the floor that it just brushed past the psychic's leg. And did she say, did you see that? Or
no, she pulled her arm up out of the way, and I said, you saw that, didn't you? And she says, I felt it.
Yeah. That thing later tried to pull the chair out from under Doug. This is another one of Doug's holding on the camera. I'm going, what are you doing? Watching back into the chair lift
I think
up.
like targeting Doug a bit here.
But everybody saw it. The back of the stool lifted up in the air.
Wow.
And there's no way I could have done it.
Well, you just did a face plant in the counter.
Yeah.
It was strange.
Poor thing. Oh, we've had teacups actually like fly off tables and stuff. It's at certain things. Yeah. Poltergeist kind of activity.
Yeah.
And were there other people there? Did you notice?
Yeah, the whole team.
Oh, and I know, not you, but were the family that lived at that place?
Oh no, that particular group, what they do, they have a very good system. Basically, they come in, they always ask the family to leave in case the children are causing the poltergeist activity. And basically, they do kind of they do quite an in-depth. They have 3 levels of investigation, and the first is that they go in by themselves and they just go around with the equipment. They do an equipment search basically, and they see if there's energy built up, and they also check for loose wiring and things like that to make sure it's nothing.
Yeah.
And then the second level is they then meet the family off-site and they do interviews individually rather than together. So they go off to a coffee shop and then they take them individually, and they interview the children and they interview the parents separately, so no one can be, and they then cross-check stories. They then go to the library and they do research on the property or the land or the farm that it was based on or whatever. And then they bring the team in overnight, and basically the team moves in. They set up in the kitchen usually, and that's there. And then they basically go around the house with devices, and they spend the night in the house and look for activity. Then what they'll do is, if the parents are cool with it, they'll bring in the children one at a time. And usually that's when they identify if it's the child who's causing the energy or something to happen. And then they'll bring in usually the wife. The father's always the last in because it's never usually the father generating the activity. It's normally female or child related, which is interesting, Jane. So maybe we're a bit more highly strung, I don't know. But it seems to be like a feminine energy that usually instigates a haunting or some type of oppression or some violence or trauma. So
I've read plenty of stories where people are living with their elderly mother, just a woman and her mother, and there's a lot of clashing of personalities and things, and that's when poltergeist activity begins. But we do essentially the same thing, not in the same order.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good way of doing it, because then you, if the family's never there, you can identify if there is actually an entity in the house. Because if you've always got the family there and you're doing everything in the house, how can you ever define that? Because it could just be generated. It could actually be something that's being manifested by one of the people in the house. So it makes sense.
I've seen that.
Yeah. A lot of times we'll have one family member stay at the house just so they know we aren't stealing the silver or something.
Oh,
you know.
Yeah, good idea.
Some around have some bad reputations, and we usually try to exclude the children. It's great to have the kids draw. If they say, "Mommy, I saw a man in my room. Could you please draw that, Johnny?" Without asking the ghost questions or anything, so you're not leading them. And we've got some strange drawings from kids.
Very much so.
Yeah. Yeah, and some look like cartoon characters they see on TV.
But when they start drawing shadow people, then we get real concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's I used to see them here, and then I do a regular cleansing now. I only just smudged the other day. I find smudging just clears all that stuff out. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. So I just I've got quite a big house, unfortunately, so it takes bloody ages to smudge. You have to go into every corner, so to get them out.
We just salt entryways and don't you even bother coming in.
We salted the entryways. We put the crystals around the property.
Yep.
And we couldn't even get the Ouija board to work.
I know. I mean, I haven't touched a Ouija board in 50 years or 40, a whole long time. And I thought, well, I got one from my psychic friend. She says, well, you're not going to use this, are you? Yeah, right. Yeah. So we tried to use it. Nothing. Flat.
Well, the planchette kept sliding off the board.
Which is no.
That's a big no-no. Yeah. They just don't want to have anything to do with you.
Yeah. The crystal gridding did it for us too. Before I had the funniest thing happen, actually. We had a neighbor in front of the property in front of us, and they weren't particularly a nice neighbor. So and somebody had just shown me how to do a grid to remove somebody from your life, basically, rather than just putting their name in the freezer. Have you heard? Do you know how to do that? If there's somebody bugging you just write their name on an ice block or something that you put in an esky in the freezer, and apparently within 6 weeks their history